2020 presidential election coverage starts now. So this is the Economist's 2020 Electoral College forecasting the U.S. elections. The Economist is analyzing polling, economic, and demographic data to predict America's elections in 2020. Right now, their model thinks Joe Biden is very likely to beat Donald Trump in the Electoral College, and they have a chance of winning the Electoral College here, and they give Joe Biden around 9 in 10, or 91% chance of winning, against Donald Trump getting around a 1 in 10, or about 9% chance of winning the Electoral College. In terms of winning them, which is how you win the presidential election, by the way. In terms of the more sort of academic curiosity of winning the most votes, Joe Biden has a better than 19 in 20 chance, or 99% chance of winning the popular vote, or at least winning the plurality. And Donald Trump has a less than 1 in 20 chance, or 1% chance of winning the popular vote. Predicted range of Electoral College votes to win, 270 is what's required to win. So they predict Joe Biden getting between 226 and 422 Electoral College votes against Donald Trump's 116 to 312 Electoral College votes. So as you can see, Joe Biden sort of has much more projected victories that are comfortably ahead of 270, and Trump has fewer of those. He has more losses that are sort of uncomfortably behind 270, according to the Economist's model. So Biden is strongly tipped to win. Their estimated Electoral College votes, their model is updated every day and combines state and national polls with economic indicators to predict a range of outcomes. The midpoint is the estimate of the Electoral College vote for each party on the election day. So that's 270 right there. And they have their various polls and stuff that come in, and their midpoint is the estimate. So it started with Biden being estimated to win about 289 Electoral College votes against Trump's 249, but then sort of they were jockeying for position here. Trump was ahead at this point in March with 276 Electoral College votes predicted. Then Biden jumped up at 274, Trump was back up at 276 Electoral College votes, and since about April 1st, since about April, that has diverged pretty strongly, with Biden now very strongly predicted to be winning the Electoral College. Here, Biden's at 280 Electoral College votes against Trump's 258 on April 11th. By May, Biden's sitting with 303 Electoral College votes against Trump's 235. Again, that black line is what you need to actually win the election. So Biden is comfortably ahead here. By June, Biden is tipped to win 332 Electoral College votes against Trump's 206. By July, Biden is sitting at 347 Electoral College votes against Trump's 191. By August, Biden is at 343 Electoral College votes against Trump's 195. By September, Biden's slightly lower at 333 Electoral College votes against Trump's 205. By October, Biden's sitting at 339 Electoral College votes against Trump's 199 Electoral College votes, and that's since diverged even further. Biden is now comfortably ahead with 347 Electoral College votes forecasted that he wins in this model against Trump's 191 Electoral College votes. The chance of winning very similar, except a little bit more exaggerated. Biden, sort of in March, was tipped to win about 58% of the popular vote against Trump's 42%. Then they jockeyed for position. Trump was once up at around 53% of the popular vote forecasted to win. Then he went down to 48, and Biden was at 52. Then Trump rose back up to about a 53% at his peak of the popular vote that he could win. Biden was at 47. And then as of April, Biden was sitting at 51% of the popular vote against Trump's 49% of the popular vote. And it has since just diverged positively since then. And Biden has just grown, from 55% of the popular vote to 75 to 85. That sort of stabilized for some time. He was up at 89% of the popular vote against Trump's 11% of the popular vote. Oh, sorry, this is the chance of winning. The probability of winning. So he wouldn't. This is not the popular vote. This is the probability. So in 100 scenarios, Biden's tipped to win 89% of those scenarios, or 89 out of 100 scenarios against Trump's 11 out of 100 scenarios. And it's since diverged. Biden's now sitting at a 91% chance of winning against Trump's 9% chance of winning. And here we have the Electoral College simulations. Their model works by simulating 20,000 paths for the election, each time varying the candidate's vote shares to account for polling error, changes in turnout or the political environment, and the effects of campaigning. The bars below represent the predicted likelihood of every plausible electoral vote outcome. So Biden wins 91% of the time, and Trump wins 9% of the time. and so that's 270, and above that are the Biden victories, and over here the biggest Biden victory, so his biggest victory is around 470 something votes against Trump's biggest victory at sort of 360 votes. But that Trump over the 270 line has fewer victories and mostly closer to 270 up to about 300 electoral college votes in the models where he wins, and then beyond that unlikely, whereas Biden has some small victories above 270, but then some massive chances of victory like 370 electoral college votes or 320 electoral college votes, etc. Then you have here the chances of winning each state, and their model combines the national prediction with polls and political economic factors at the state level. They take into account the states that are similar and likely to move with each other. If Donald Trump wins Minnesota, he probably will win Wisconsin too. So here they have Biden, and with the chances that he wins. So of course a dark blue means the safe seat for Biden is a 99% plus chance of winning, and the dark red is where Trump's safe, probabilistically a 99+% chance of winning. And the size of the bubbles here are the amount of electoral college votes that go to the particular candidate. Here, whoever wins California gets 55 electoral college votes. And the center of the country is sort of red because that's sort of Republican electoral college votes. But you can see that the states that Republicans are strongly tipped to win don't offer much in the way of electoral college votes. But the Republicans are winning them. So in this model, as you can see, here's the 270 to win line, and above that the candidate wins, and Biden has all of his states and Trump has all of his. But Biden then with Pennsylvania gets pushed over the top of their 270. They add to that, they give Florida to Biden, they give Arizona to Biden, they give North Carolina to Biden, and then Georgia, Ohio, and Iowa they have unallocated. So just Pennsylvania, that's 20, Florida 29, Arizona 11 electoral college votes, and North Carolina 15 electoral college votes. That's the victory that you're looking at as a Democrat. Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Those states are what are going to win you this election according to this model. Trump sitting there with all of his smaller states in Texas, but he's not allocated Iowa, Ohio, or Georgia, which even if he was, of course, he's still not close to the 270 needed to win. He'd then have to get North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, and Pennsylvania to win. And so that's their map, and that's how they sort of allocate who's going to win each state. Key states. They use two measures to measure states' importance. One is the tipping point probability, the chance that a state will cast the decisive 270th electoral vote for the victor. The other is the chance that any single voter in a state will cast the decisive ballot that wins the tipping point state for the next president. So here they have the states and the projected vote margins. Pennsylvania, they have a projected vote margin going plus 6% for the Democrats, Florida plus 3% to the Democrats, Michigan plus 7% to the Democrats, Wisconsin plus 6% to the Democrats, North Carolina plus 2% to the Democrats, Minnesota plus 8% to the Democrats, Arizona plus 2% to the Democrats, Texas plus 3% to the Republicans, Georgia plus 0, i.e. They're both sort of neck and neck, and New Hampshire plus 7% to the Democrats. So those are those key states, okay? Pennsylvania, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Minnesota, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, and New Hampshire. And of those, the only one that went Republican is Texas. They had the margin in 2016. As you can see, Pennsylvania was won by the Republicans in 2016, as was Florida, as was Michigan, as was Wisconsin, as was North Carolina, as was Arizona, as was Texas, and as was Georgia. But they have the win probability here, and the Democrats are usually pretty strongly favored to win against the Republicans, being less favored to win in the states that they're winning, and the chance of a voter deciding the election, i.e. one person deciding the election. In Pennsylvania, I mean, if you're curious about this, in Pennsylvania there's a 1 in 7.8 million chance that one person is going to decide the election. In Florida, there's a 1 in 20 million chance that one person is going to decide the election. That's 50-50 plus 1 for whatever the candidate is. In Michigan, there's a 1 in 9.2 million chance of that. In Wisconsin, a 1 in 8.2 million chance of that. North Carolina, 1 in 24 million. Minnesota, 1 in 17 million. Arizona, 1 in 17 million. Texas, 1 in 48 million. Georgia, 1 in 29 million. And New Hampshire, 1 in 8.4 million. So of the swing states, if you want to be that one person who ends up changing the entire election for your state, your best bet is to move to Pennsylvania or New Hampshire. So if you want to do that, I'd get moving right away, because you have to get all those you have to get registered as having lived in that state, etc. The tipping point probability, i.e. the probability that that state, having changed, is then going to tip the entire election in a different direction. Has Pennsylvania up as the top state, where whichever direction it goes, it'll tip the election. I mean, if that state alone goes, you now have a 25% chance that the entire election goes to the other candidate. Florida, if the model is wrong and that state changes, then there's now an additional 15% chance that the election tips to the other party. Michigan, 13% chance. Wisconsin, 10% chance. North Carolina, 6% chance. Minnesota, 5% chance. Arizona, 5% chance. Texas, 4% chance. Georgia, 3% chance. And New Hampshire, 3% chance. Down here, they have modeled popular vote each day. And the model first averages the polls, weighing them by their sample sizes and correcting them for tendencies to overestimate support for one party. It then combines this average with our forecast based on non-polling data, pulling vote shares on each day slightly toward the final election day projection. And so they have that 95% confidence interval here, and then they have the average. And you can see that Biden's sitting at 53% of the popular vote against Trump's 46.8% of the popular vote, and that's since shifted to Biden 54.3% of the popular vote against Trump's 45.7% of the popular vote. And that's the forecast popular vote share. In terms of polls, you can actually see the individual polls that comprise that in terms of the popular vote share. So in terms of the least optimistic for Biden, you have Biden at 52% of the popular vote. And the most optimistic poll that we've seen recently for Trump has Trump at 48% of the popular vote. So you can be fairly confident that it's highly unlikely that Biden's going to get less than 52% of the popular vote, and highly unlikely that Trump's going to get more than 48% of the popular vote. So I just take that on board and move on, because there's not even a single poll that would support a more optimistic scenario than that. In terms of the pollsters, here are the pollsters that they've used: ABC, Ipsos, Data for Progress, YouGov, Fox News, Redfield, Global Strategy Group, Ipsos, Morning Consult, and YouGov. And the margins usually, in terms of the popular vote, have Democrats up 12%, sort of 8 to 15.5%. And in terms of how states move together, their model also simulates what would happen if the race moves, or polls are biased in a similar amount in like states. We calculate the similarity between states by comparing their demographic and political profiles, such as the share of white voters who live there and how religious they are and how urban and rural the state is. California has a weak correlation with the center. New York has a weak correlation with the center. But New York has a strong correlation with California, and Texas has a strong correlation with California. And the center has a strong correlation with itself. And so that's the Economist forecast. And hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you did, give it a like, give it a follow, give it a subscribe, and put a comment in the comment section below telling me what you think. Was it too optimistic? Was it too pessimistic? For which candidate? Thanks for listening.